The power of NABHOOD, the power of getting together, the power of organizing, the power of speaking with one voice. That letter came in. There was an 11-member board of directors that had been pretty well vetted, and we got that letter, and that changed the dynamic. We were able to, really bring a great board member along with the other 10 who were also incredible, named Daniel Halpern from Atlanta. And Daniel wanted to be here today. Daniel is the CEO of Jackmont, which was Maynard Jackson, former mayor of the Williams Company. So I just wanted to underscore the power of something that may seem pretty small, but actually turned into a big deal. And, Daniel has been really responsible for helping shape the board's vision with respect to African Americans, diversity, in particular in this industry and in this market. So with that, let me go back a little bit and tell you a little bit about Brand USA. And I think 2 years ago, I had the pleasure of speaking to this group where I was an Obama administration appointee. I was working as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for International Trade Administration and had the overall responsibility for the services industry. And so at that time, I got a chance to meet Andy, and we have since carried on the relationship. And I am now on the private side of this entity, which is the Brand USA. So let me walk you through what the Brand USA is. All right, so Brand USA, what is it? It was formally enacted by Congress, signed into law by President Obama, and it is it's pretty significant because it's the first time that there's been a statutory mandate law signed into law by the President of the United States. It was not signed in. This is a partisan company, but it's just a fact. It was not signed into law by the previous administration. And the whole purpose of Brand USA is to lead the nation's global marketing effort for increasing international travel to the United States. And that seems like, why is that a big deal? I'm going to tell you why that's a big deal in a second. But the other two components of this, which are real important, particularly for a lot of the folks in this room that are interested in, obviously, just hearing the last conversation, knowing about your organization, thinking about hotels and thinking about conventions and thinking about attracting business travelers, not only domestically but abroad, and how they hosting their conferences into your hotel. We also have to do our mandate statutorily to communicate U.S. entry, security, process, and procedures. Again, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but you'd be surprised when you go to China and you go to Brazil and you go to places around the world. A lot of times, it's just very confusing and very difficult for them to navigate. How do you get to the United States? And oh, by the way, it's a lot easier just to go to Australia or Dubai. And that costs a significant amount of money to the economy, the U.S. economy, and to U.S. jobs. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. And the other is one that can't be taken for granted, and certainly is known to everybody in this room, which is the mandate of the corporation is to create a more welcoming environment for international visitors. I think over the last, the 2000 to 2010, kind of what we call the lost decade for travel and tourism, based on some probably very rational decisions at the time, or at least purported to be rational, we didn't create the most welcoming environment for international visitors. And I think there's people that would argue that there was good reasons. We needed to balance security. We had to tighten our borders. I don't accept that in this environment. I wasn't in the business at that time, so I'm not going to go back and speculate on those good or bad decisions. I do know that those decisions cost $606 billion of lost revenue in this industry. I know it costs 467,000 jobs annually, and I know it costs us a great deal in the perception of a lot of people in the world. But what I don't know is if those procedures did in fact save lives or protect our borders any better. So I won't speculate on that, but I will say from an economic perspective, and in today's environment, I think we can do both. And our mandate is not to, and the Brand USA, is not to go back and re-articulate or readdress the policy. It is to re-articulate policy. It is not to re-debate it. Our job is to make sure people are aware and that we're working to create a more welcoming environment. And then we're working with, still obviously, my former colleagues at the U.S. Department of Commerce. And then I think many of you know Roger Dow and the U.S. Travel Association. We work collaboratively with them as we're not connected. We're not the same company. We're very different. We have very different mandates. But clearly, overall, same mission, which is to inspire travel and tourism to the United States. Here's something that's pretty unique, and I'm not going to bore you to death with this thing, but I was just say, well, that's great. So you got this company called Brand USA. You're promoting the United States internationally for the first time. I can't stress that enough. For the first time ever, you'd be surprised. If you went to Brazil, you went to China, you went to UK, you went to Canada, you'd see an ad for New York. You'd see an ad for California. You'd see an ad for Miami. You'd see an ad for, but you wouldn't see an ad for Atlanta. You wouldn't see an ad for North Carolina. You wouldn't see an ad for Alabama. So what we are doing is not promoting one single destination. We are promoting the United States of America for the first time abroad. You guys have seen ads for South Africa, who I think do a phenomenal job. You've seen ads for Brazil, even though Andy gets mad at me, and I know he's not Jamaican. He's from the Bahamas, but you see ads from the Bahamas, you see ads from, Eddie, is that right? You're from the Bahamas? Did I get it right this time? Bermuda? Where am I? I'm just messing with Andy. All right, but Jamaica, you see, I think everybody could rattle off that ad, that imagery in their minds when they think about that. Our mandate is to do that, but it's to go a step further. We're really looking to create a movement. We're really trying to re-inspire and reimagine for people what the United States is and all the possibilities they have. So that's why I take a step back. But the funding works this way. It's not like we have a slush fund of money that we say, okay, who's got an idea, who wants money, who wants to start to work to get involved in international travel, who can benefit. We're not a grant-making agency. The way it works is we're now imposing a fee on international travelers from visa waiver countries. This is a little boring, but it's interesting. There's about 38 visa waiver countries in this right now, and those include folks like the UK. They include Japan. They include. You imagine in your mind some of the countries that we have the most familiar long-term relationships with, and that are more of a developed nature. We have visa waiver status with them. That means you don't have to go and get a visa and go through a huge interview in that process. It's an application. We're now assessing a $14 fee on international travelers from visa waiver countries. $4 of those go into a fund for Homeland Security to administer this program in terms of the collection, the electronic system of travel authorization. $10 goes into a trust for each traveler that is made available to Brand USA for the purpose of promoting the United States. Now, the only way we can unlock that money, and this is critically important because I hope, like heck, to walk out of here today and tomorrow to really figure out how to work with folks to unlock funds without you necessarily having to write a penny directly. The way we unlock those funds is if you contribute $1 between the first year of the Travel Promotion Act, $1 unlocks $2. So we get a 2-for-1 match. We can go to that fund and we can say, NABHOOD contributed $1, or they put our logo in the Caribbean where they were getting ready to do a hosted conference, or they were working with I'm just thinking of folks that Andy's introduced me to in the past, but the tourism minister from Jamaica, they helped us make sure that we were able to put some signage of Brand USA on their website that they can click through to get to our stuff. All of those things can count and get fair market value for in-kind and unlocking funds. So in the most simple way, you see here that each dollar from the private sector, whether it's in cash or in-kind, will unlock plus $1 of matching funds from the fund will be made available. And we have up to, and it's a little bit misleading because the first year I can see where we're saying $200 million. It's really $100 million annually. And while that seems like a lot of money, and in the context of the previous conversation I heard about hotel development and what it costs, it's probably not as significant to the, but it is a lot of money, and it's a lot of money even when you compare it to the $200 million annually that the UK has been spending, not counting the Olympics. Brazil, Dubai. I mean, Dubai goes to some events around the world and will spend $1 million on just a trade show. And so we're at a competitive disadvantage to some degree, but this helps to level the playing field for us internationally. And it gives an avenue for people in industry and companies and hotels that have not participated in attracting international visitors up to this point, that just haven't said, this doesn't make sense for me economically, I don't have the cash. This gives a platform for folks to engage in that otherwise would not. So with that, the first step in creating a company like this, very much obviously a startup, never been done before. We came together, hired a great management team. We actually are currently in the process of doing a search for a CEO. And my job is, I'm one of the division heads responsible for all of government outreach, stakeholder outreach, and industry. And so that's what I do at Radio Say. We have a chief marketing officer, a chief business development officer, and a chief communications officer as my counterparts. So first thing we did was we had to create a campaign. What is our message? What are we trying to do? And in order to do that, you have to do the research. And what we found out is that we really needed to figure out how do you bring this market together, or how do you explain all the aspects of the United States that otherwise people had either thought about and forgotten, or just if they close their eyes for a second. And I like to do this exercise real quick, because I won't ask you to close your eyes, but if you were given 7 days, all expense paid, anywhere you could go, anywhere in the world, vacation, where would you go? And generally, I'll just jump to the conclusion here, most people, your first choice necessarily wouldn't be Florida, California, Alabama, Mississippi. You're probably thinking Bora Bora, South Africa, So why is that? Because the truth is, that's a problem. I mean, I understand as Americans, thinking, hey, I've lived here my whole life. But guess what? That's what we found out the rest of the world thinks too. We're middle-aged. They're familiar with us. They've been here, they've done it, they're no longer, when I was a kid and I played competitive soccer growing up, we go abroad and people would just want to, hear what a Yankee sounded like, or get a pair of jeans. That doesn't exist anymore. So why do we re-inspire? And one of the ways that we're working with Andy and NABHOOD and Saul and others is thinking about how do we really integrate the cultural tourism aspect into this, because people from abroad are very interested in that. And so we really looked at this. Our research showed that we need to create a welcoming environment. We talked about that. We also needed to make sure people had 100% awareness of the United States and about a 2% clarity. I mean, when they thought about the United States, they saw stars and stripes, bald eagle, Statue of Liberty, the New York skyline, the typical things that all of us would think about. Which, oh, by the way, is fantastic. That's patriotic, that's prideful, that is our fabric that weaves us together. There's nothing wrong with that. Just the reality is, from a marketing perspective, if you're trying to sell a product and people say, well, I've had that 1,000 times, thank you, we needed to change that a little bit. So let me make sure I don't want to conflate these two issues, because what I'm going to show you is our campaign in a second, and it will clearly show that we have, it's important to know that we made a conscious decision to not show typical images that you would see when you think about the United States, when you think about how do you promote the United States. So
we did divide our campaign into really 4 pillars: great outdoors, urban excitement, indulgence, and cultural. And I'm going to show you the TV spot, and then, listen, I'm going to be the first to tell you, either you like it, you don't like it, you're lukewarm to it. The truth is, I had a boss, my whole career before joining the administration and now here was in financial services. And I worked for a company at one point, and there's a company called MBA, not the one, I worked for them for a long time. Actually, for the kids in the room that are aspiring, I was at Morehouse College, which Andy should have said, by the way, I graduated from Morehouse. I started my sophomore year in the telemarketing department, working on the phones and worked my way up to senior vice president, running the New York office, and then went to business school in New York, and then up in, long story, we can talk about my career later, but I just say that to say, for the youth in the room, don't have any problem doing whatever you have to do to get ahead. And that experience, being on the front line, talking to customers, enabled me to navigate that organization. I've never found another opportunity like that where I knew everything about a company and knew the people, knew where to go, and it really had everything to do with that one experience. That said, one of the big things I learned at that company was we were responsible for creating co-marketing. At the time, we called it affinity marketing. And some of you may remember Georgetown University credit cards, St. John's University credit card. They still exist today, or the New York, Yankees credit card. We invented that concept, that program. I can't take credit for me inventing it, but I was there when it was being invented. Charlie Paul is the CEO of the company. Georgetown graduate invented it and created it. And when I started, there was a $10 billion company, which is an outstandings, meaning how much sum total of all the credit card balances of your customers, to finally when it was sold to Bank of America at $150 million. So the company had an incredible marketing machine, just to set the stage. We would go into a room, and one of the most senior people in the company would walk in, or the CEO would walk in and say, "Hey, what do you all think about this creative? What do you think what do you think this image looks like?" And if you were new and you didn't know better, you'd raise your hand and say, "I don't really like it. And they would listen to you for a while, and they'd say, "Well, we don't care because it matters what the test and control show." So that's not to say I don't care about what you think about the creative. It's to say that we are really doing this from a pure marketing perspective, and it's test control, and we're still seeing, and we'll make tweaks and adjustments, and absolutely, in my mind, this is a test group. We should get feedback, but I do want to make sure that there's no campaign that everybody will appeal to. Having said that, it sounds like I'm about to show you something terrible. I think this is incredible. Hopefully that's the line. I think we're going to have to make sure it's running off the computer, not off the disk, because it looks like it's choppy. Here. Alright. Maybe I have to let it load a little bit. Well, you can criticize that, because that's not what it's supposed to look like. All right, so I don't know if there's something we can do to fix it. I'll come back to that on the tail end, but that campaign I'll show is running in the UK, and Japan, and Canada. And we're going to continue to do such for months. When I say running, meaning that primetime television, primetime viewership, in the movie theaters, people for the first time are, being asked correctly to visit the United States. And it really is helping, again, pre-campaign is to really start to shape a new way in which we want to show people there's all these other things to do than your typical destinations that you've been to before. With that, we're running print campaigns. And these are, again, our mission is to market internationally. So it's not typical that you can see it anywhere in the U.S., although we want to make sure that people do know what's going on here in the U.S., particularly. But there are other things of hear it, feel it, taste it, see it. And you can see, we're trying to show here, this is a jazz musician, but you think about the redwood forest in California, feel it. And then we have campaigns, ad campaigns, commercials that will run against those themes. And so we'll also do out-of-home billboards and signage, see it, taste it, and these are running in Japan. In Japan, it's interesting, if you've ever been there, in the subways, they blanket, a little bit like New York, but even on steroids. They blanket with advertising. And the buses, the subways are wrapped in the advertising. Here's an example of Canada, where you'll see it. And again, it doesn't seem landmark, it doesn't seem incredible, but the truth is, it's never been done before. And people have never looked up in another country and had to think about the United States. What they unfortunately have seen in the last 10 years in their minds is imagery of us fighting a lot of wars, and imagery of, so we need to make sure that imagery is balanced with some real call to action and reminders about the positive things the United States offers the world and experiences. Digital advertising, really incredible website. Another way in which we're looking for ways to unlock those funds. Something as simple as, hey, you all from your destination or from your hotel have an image or some content that you can provide to us that we can put on our website under that appropriate section would be fantastic. And it actually would allow us to draw down federal funds, matching 2-for-1, and then in turn continue to promote the program. So it becomes a virtuous cycle. And indulgence, you can see, we're really trying to highlight, here's a rock out at a concert in Nashville, Tennessee, from, we do have the Walt Disney's, but the Hershey chocolate in Pennsylvania. Outdoors, we're working with the Interior Department. We're really looking to leverage all their assets for the national parks and agriculture, and working with the State Department to make sure that we're in 220 consulate offices around the world with flyers, campaigns, digital fuel. When you're coming into the arrival halls for Customs and Borders, most people have experienced it's just a long wait. You're sitting there. I think we have gotten used to it to some degree, but the reality is when you're trying to entice a visitor to come here, spend money, and enjoy and have a personal relationship with the United States and want to come back, the last thing you want to happen is that they are stuck in a terrible line just after a fantastic experience in Miami or in Cooperstown, New York at the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. They come back and they're just, having a hell of a time getting out of the country or getting in, and we're not friendly. That's the last impression that we inevitably leave with them, and that's not what we want to do. And then, how do we select our markets? This gets in a little to the weeds, but I'm happy to go into it in detail. But important note is we wanted to, our mission was to make sure we had a campaign that ultimately has the bones to be inclusive of all 50 states and 5 territories. We looked at the number of visitors in each country, total revenue of tourism from that country, year-over-year growth, and the cost of doing business, and the market effectiveness in that market. And then we looked at a subjective score, which is what are the visa requirements, waiting period, political considerations. Brazil is an example. Brazil is a no-brainer, particularly for anybody in Florida understands that the power of the Brazilian travel tourists and their ability to spend money. I think other than China and maybe one other, they are the highest per average spender when they come. Think about this. On average, a Brazilian comes, spends money here, stays 5 days and leaves, and they spend, on average, $6,500. So they're coming to us, spending money on our goods and services, and then leaving, and they're having a great experience. I can't think of any better model. It's kind of a model of the hotel, if you really think about it. But the subjective score here is Brazil's not a visa waiver country. And so it's more difficult to come in to the country. And so we're staging the Brazilian launch back a little bit. So I'll talk about this. So far through May through July of 2012, we launched in 3 markets, as I said. You can see so far overall spend, in those markets, and you can see the average spend, the average value per visitor from Japan is 4,000, UK, and Canada 1,000, but it's a volume play because Canada, we just walk back and forth across the border, so. It's a huge market. It's our largest feeder market. If you look at just raw numbers, the total number of visitors from anywhere in the world, who comes here most? The Canadians and Mexicans. So those are critical markets, but they're on average, because they're usually day stays or 2-day stays, they're not spending to the same degree, or they have friends and they stay in their houses. They're not staying at hotels. Still a very important market. And that's why it was part of our first launch, but just a different economic model there. And then, so our goal is in future markets, Australia, Brazil, South Korea, France, Mexico. And so you can see we have a real aggressive plan. When I say future markets, I mean specifically the full integrated marketing campaign that I hope that we're able to show on my computer. We're also having a global infrastructure, so we'll have eyes and ears on the ground and market, and we're building out a sales force that will be reps for Brand USA in markets. And the primary purpose of those firms, and if anybody knows any firms who are currently doing a request for proposal for Australia and South Korea, but the idea would be that they would help us come up with cooperative initiatives. They would help us with trade shows and missions. They'll help with familiarization tours, and they'll also do specialized training programs and thematic itinerary development and visiting journalist programs. So we're really hoping to engage over the next couple of days with Andy and Saul and others to talk about how we can do some of these programs together as well. Events and trade shows are a critical platform for us, where we've had in the past, again, I mentioned Dubai spending, upwards of $1 million just to be at one of the large international travel and tourism trade shows around the world. We have not had the opportunity to have the, Alabama's, North Carolina's there. And so now we have a platform that will allow us to have one huge USA pavilion. And we're going to be looking, so if any of these spark anybody's attention and think that their tourism entity or their interest would be well served, just know, and I'll make sure Andy gets this out there, but this is where we will be around the world promoting the value of coming to the United States. Lots of metrics I won't bore you with. But early results of the campaign that we've launched so far are really positive, and we've got a long way to go, and the only way we're going to get there is creating collaborative programs. So I'm looking forward to working with you all and anybody that you may refer me to. We are also looking for, I'll just throw this out there, African-American, minority-owned ad agencies. Right now, all the work so far has been done by JWT, fantastic firm out of New York, but we'd like to diversify to some degree and make sure that we're, getting different viewpoints, and so there is an active look for that. And also, I know Saul and I talked about this, and got to follow up, but want to really figure out how to engage on the trade and the media side of this, and make sure that this group has a voice in this really unique once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. With that, 5 ways to partner, invest, promote, connect, co-market, collaborate. The best way is if you write a check, that check becomes people on master training. The other way is, hey, we've got services we can offer. We can put your flyer, we can connect, we put your logo on our website. And so lots of different ways to connect and support this effort. And again, I want to thank you for the time. I would love to try to figure out how to show that video before it's over, so let me know how we get there. Thank you.